Welcome to Everything Law. In today's episode, we are diving into an important aspect of the Constitution of Kenya, the limitation of rights and fundamental freedoms under Article 24. While rights are fundamental, they are not absolute. This article sets out the conditions under which rights can be limited. Stay with us as we break down what this means, how it works, and why it's crucial for maintaining a balance between individual freedoms and societal needs. So, Article 24 of the Constitution of Kenya is all about the limitation of rights and freedoms. It recognizes that while rights are essential, there are times when they need to be restricted for the greater good of society, but there is a catch. These limitations must be reasonable and justifiable. Article 24 makes it clear that a right of fundamental freedom in the Bill of Rights can only be limited by law, and even then, only to the extent that the limitation is reasonable in a society that values human dignity, equality, and freedom. But how do we determine if how do we determine if a limitation is reasonable? Let's break it down, okay? So Article 24 sets out a test for determining whether a limitation is justified. Here are the factors that must be considered. The factors of limiting rights are nature of the right, importance of the purpose, nature and extent of the limitation, impact on other rights, and less restrictive alternatives. Factors of limiting rights, nature of the right. Okay, that's the first one I've said. It is the right in question a core or fundamental one. That's the when we look at the nature of right, we look at if the right in question is a core or fundamental one. For example, the right to life or freedom of expression is harder to limit than, say, the right to access certain public services. We check importance of the purpose. Why is this limitation necessary? Is it to protect national security, public health, or public order? The reason must be important enough to justify limiting the rights. We look at the nature and extent of the limitation. How much of the right is being restricted? The limitation should be as minimal as possible while still achieving the goal. The impact on others' rights. Does limiting one person's right harm the rights of others? The law aims to strike a balance between individual freedoms and the rights of others. The fifth point we look at when limiting rights, factors of limiting rights. Less restrictive alternatives. Can the same goal be achieved with less restriction? If there's a less harmful way, that should be the preferred option. So this test ensures that any limitation is carefully considered and doesn't go too far. It's all about balancing individual rights with the needs of society. So understanding the application of limitations. Article 24 doesn't just talk about limitations in theory. It also gives us practical guidelines on how these limitations should be applied. For instance, any law that limits a right must be clear and specific about the right being limited and the extent of the limitation. Moreover, the law can't limit a right so much that it derogates from its core or essential content. This means that even if a right is limited, its fundamental essence cannot be taken away. For example, while the right to privacy can be limited in certain situations, the core of the right, like the protection of personal information, must remain intact. What is the burden of proof and judicial oversight? So, who decides if a limitation is justified? The Constitution places the burden of proof on the state or any individual seeking to justify the limitation. They must prove to the court that the limitation meets all the criteria laid out in Article 24. This ensures that the government or any party wanting to limit a right cannot just do so without justification. Courts play a crucial role in overseeing whether these limitations are reasonable and justifiable. There are some specific cases where limitations apply differently. For instance, the Constitution allows for limitations in the case of the Kenya Defence Forces and National Police Service. For example, the right to privacy, freedom of association, and even economic rights can be limited for these groups, but only to the extent necessary for them to carry out their duties. However, the core content of these rights cannot be taken away. Now that we understand the legal framework, what does this mean for you? Here are some key takeaways on how to navigate the limitation of rights in Kenya. Number 1, the practical takeaways. Know your rights. Number 2, understand the limits. Number 3, seek legal help. And number 4, engage the system. I repeat, 4 practical takeaways for citizens. Number 1, know your rights. Understanding the rights you have, the first step in knowing when they might be limited. If you feel your rights are being unfairly restricted, you have the right to challenge it in court. Number 2, understand the limits. Limitations are not arbitrary. They must be reasonable and justifiable. If you think a limitation will help, always consult with an advocate. If you believe your rights are being violated, consider seeking legal representation. A lawyer can help you understand whether the limitation is justified and assist you in seeking redress. Number 4, engage with the system. If a law limits a right in an unjust way, you can challenge it in court. The judicial system exists to ensure that rights are upheld and that limitations are applied fairly to everyone, regardless whether you are rich or you're poor. The law doesn't favor. More relatable, let's look at a few examples, okay? Like in a public health crisis, during a pandemic, the government may limit freedom of movement, like what we saw during COVID time, to control the spread of disease. The limitation must be justified as necessary for public health and cannot go beyond what is needed. Number 2, during national security. In times of national security threats, the government might limit certain freedoms, like freedom of assembly, but only to the extent necessary to protect public safety. Police powers. The police may limit privacy rights in certain investigations, but they cannot infringe on the core of the right. For instance, surveillance must be justified and proportionate to the threat. So in conclusion, as we conclude this Article 24 of the Constitution of Kenya, it sets out clear guidelines for when and how rights can be limited. It ensures limitations are reasonable, justifiable, and necessary for the greater good of society. By understanding these provisions, we can protect our rights while also ensuring that the law is applied fairly and justly. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Everything Law for more insights into Kenya's constitution. Got questions or comments? Drop them below. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay updated with our latest videos. Together, let's build a more informed and empowered society. Bye bye guys. See you next time. Bye.